always been taught is that we're small. You're not. The things that happen to you happen for you. And if you learn to look at them that way, there is no way that you'll stumble into a junk pile. You'll find you're sitting in the middle of a gem pile, and it is waiting for you to pick them up, use them, and grow them one at a time. The universe is in service of you. It always was, and it always will be. The day you agree to be the biggest version of yourself is the humblest day of your life. It's actually one of the biggest adventures you will ever go on. It's an absolute hoot. And once you start on it, you're going to go, how was I asleep for so long?
The episode you're about to watch has been republished. My podcast channel reaches a lot more people now, and there's certain episodes that have slipped under the radar, and I wanted to bring them up for your attention because I truly feel they are worth listening to. So please be sure to let me know what you think of this episode in the comments below. And of course, let's continue to connect. Let me know where you are in the world and where you're listening and tuning in from. I love reading it. It's amazing, isn't it, that we can do this? And the other thing I want to say as well is find out where we are if you want to put your spiritual boots on and come and join us at one of our 5-day retreats or one-day events around the world. Links are below as well if you want to find out more what we're up to. Much love from me. Enjoy. There we go. We are recording. Judy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It is lovely to see you halfway around the world.
I deeply appreciate you coming on. I know we were just chatting off air slightly, but I stumbled across your work through Barry Goldstein, who I had on the podcast a while back.
I
And
love Barry. Yeah.
he's a beautiful soul. And I saw him that you'd been collaborating, and I was like, oh, who's Judy? You know, so I went and stalked you for a little while and then reached out. So I really appreciate you being here, Judy.
Thank you. Yeah, he and I actually created 2 meditations. The meditation, it's a Constellations meditation, which is a world first. So it takes you all the way through a constellation. And he did all of, he did all of the music and the producing for me, and I laid down the track. And he is incredible to work with.
Wow. You know, you've opened up a question already, which I wasn't going to go into, but it's like, well, what is a constellation and why is that meditation the world's first in that?
Yeah. So a constellation is really a 3D image. So it's the breakthrough piece of this work. What we do is you may come to see me, and you say, I've always been sad. So we want to look at where does the sadness come from? Because in systemic work, we know you don't just inherit physical DNA, you also inherit emotional DNA. So often your sadness is not your sadness, but you're holding on to it as though it were. So to explore that, we may say, well, let's have a look at you, mom, dad, sister, brother. And we pick live representatives for each one of those and set them up in the room the way it is for you when you think about this issue. So now you've got this spatial picture. And because I can then start asking questions about, well, why are they so close? Why are they more distant? Why is dad not engaged? Why is mom in the middle of things? You start to have these interactive ahas and insights. And we explore your limiting language and your sadness, and then see, so why is this pattern here now? What wants to stop? And what is the pattern that's trying to start through you? And with a series of dialogues and movements, it then becomes an embodied experience and a multi-sensory one, because you're seeing it, hearing it, feeling it, getting it, grounding it. And so this becomes that transformational moment, and you begin to rewire. So why is this a world first? Because there have been plenty of meditations, but people will say, I can't get to you now at a live event. How am I going to experience one? So I got together with Barry and I said, this is what I do. And I dialogued an entire constellation. So it's a guided meditation. There are 2, one of the mother and one of the father. And each one takes you into the line, for example, of the mother, all the way back to the beginning, then pulls you back in and gives you the opportunity to look at a pattern of stuckness and shift that pattern in the moment, and then come back into the present. And the same for the father. So yeah,
Wow.
world first.
Incredible. Congratulations. Is that available yet? Is that out or
It
is it
is. It's
still?
on my website. It is available. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I will definitely take it for a listen. That's for
And
sure.
it's Barry did an amazing, amazing job. And like I say, he's one of those people. If Barry produces you, you're in such good hands. He's great.
Yeah, no, he's a beautiful soul, and it sounds incredible what you all the work you do, and that's why I was so excited to have you on, Judy. And I always ask everyone on the show because I think it's a great way to distill it down. But like, if you were at an intimate dinner party and you sat next to a stranger and they asked you what you did for a living, what would you say? Because there's so much complexity to it.
I would say I teach people to see the other half of the language that they never knew they had. So, what I mean by that is, we're all taught that we should suffer well, live a suffering life, die nicely, and you get seat L34 at the top when you go there, which is not the truth. But what we're not taught is the language of capability, possibility, how much we can do. And so by looking, and then the other thing I teach is there's no such thing as a train smash. You're not a train smash. There is no train smash.
Mm.
Everything there is there for you. It's in service of you. And all I do is I teach people how to look at their junk pile, find the gems that are right there if they know how to see them, and literally change their lives one new thought, one new feeling, one new action at a time. That's it. Logically, but transformatively.
Amazing, amazing. Because when I was on your website, Judy, and I wrote this down because I loved it, mate. And it says, "How big are you willing to be?" Straight at the caption. And I think the question I have for you then: how much potential are we not allowing ourselves or to express the full body of ourselves?
A
F-
lot, a lot, a lot. So the reason I ask that question is because we're tied into our family systems. That's the way we are. It's the way we belong. And so if the family says everybody should play small, we play small. If everybody says don't have too much money, we don't have too much money. So we buy very deeply into that. And we're master magicians. What we tell ourselves and believe with our heart and our gut becomes our truth. So not a very smart thing to do. We are locking down way much of who we are. But the reason I ask the question is people will invariably say to me, well, that's a little egotistical. And I say to them, the day you agree to be the biggest version of yourself is the humblest day of your life. It is the first time that you agree to take responsibility for creating a full life, and you are now in service of the universe.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I can so relate, and it gives me goosebumps, Judy. Honestly, because when I was telling you, how I sold my out of my company in 2018, it was literally that question in a different way. I was asking myself, well, how far am I? I used to say, how far am I willing to lean in to see the full expression of myself?
Yeah,
And each day it would terrify me and excite me all at once. And
which is
I,
great.
right?
Yes, because where the terrifying and the mystical meet, the incredible is bound to happen.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What about on your journey? I'm curious, with all this work, were there obviously inherited um, parts of yourself that you had to overcome through your journey to then becoming to teach this work? What did that
Well,
look like for you?
yeah, it was actually the oddest thing because people, I have the gift, and it sounds odd, but I have the gift of some awful things that turned out to be rather amazing. So what happened was we moved to the US and my father was killed. And that sort of was a huge jolt because he was this great big 6'4" beautiful Irishman who was the absolute patriarch of the family. And a lot of that then fell to me. We were busy with immigration. There was a whole lot going on, and it was either I'm going to write books or I'm going to go crazy. So I decided writing books was probably a better option. And I started writing books. That led me to someone who was doing some of this work. And he said, come learn my work and I'll help you with a book. So I went to learn the work and got zero help with the book, by the way. and started this journey, and it just kept going. And then one day somebody said to me, well, of course you can do it. And I said, why? And they said, because it comes from South Africa. Well, I didn't know that. But stranger still was, it's based on the Zulu tribe. Bert Hellinger went to go and tame the Zulus, and he says the Zulus tamed him. And what he discovered was they didn't have neuroses, because every time something went wrong, they would go looking in the family system to see what was off. So they knew that the family system was important. Well, what makes it even odder is I worked in a teaching hospital for years, and when I left, the person who gave my farewell speech was a Zulu gentleman. And he said, you may be leaving us, but you will find a way to represent us in the world. And I laughed. And now I do every day.
Wow, I gotcha. Okay. So you've got Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint, right? With the latest book that came out, A Powerful Guide to Transformations Through Disentangling Multi-Generational Patterns. And you say those patterns are inherited. Would
Yeah,
that be right?
yeah.
So when I was contemplating coming on with you coming on the podcast this morning, I was thinking, when you say inherited, because when I was worked in the fitness industry, we had a saying that the person always inherits the cookbook, meaning they pick up the habits of, the way they've been taught to eat and so
Right,
forth. And for us, one of the biggest challenges was trying to break the pattern of the way they ate to support their health journey as well.
right, right.
But when from your perspective, and I'd love to know if there's science on this, when we say inherited in the DNA as well, is it from a way we're being taught, or is it physically getting passed through each birth into the DNA
Both,
as well?
both. So
Both.
here's what we know. We know that epigenetically, they've done a lot of studies on this kind of work, and what we now know is, if you look at something like the Great Dutch Hunger Winter, there was a city that was completely surrounded by the Germans because they had supported the resistance, and for 3 months there was no food, no water. They lived off what they could find. And what happened was, they then, because it was an intact group, they studied it and found that the mothers who'd been pregnant with children at the time not only had eating disorders, which you would expect, but that those markers were being activated on the genes of their children, and then their children, and their children. And we saw this with the Holocaust, and we've seen it again with the 9/11 studies, where pregnant women have children with PTSD markers that are elevated. So we now know that if there's a significant event, whatever it is for you, and there's an imprint on the system, it becomes the blueprint for generations of behavior, and it just keeps echoing through. Add to that exactly what you said, which was great grandmother goes into shock because she loses 7 children and has no emotion. Grandmother looks at great grandmother and goes, we don't have emotion, and internalizes that and has no emotion. Mom looks at grandmother and goes, oh, or her mom, we don't have emotions. And there's a child who comes to see me as a client and says, I don't know why I have no emotions. And then when we work, begins to cry and can't stop and says, what's happening to me? And the answer to that is, you're crying 4 generations worth of emotions.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me, I just want to repeat this just for the listeners as well. And as I process a bit slow sometimes, Judy, but so to get this right, we're not only then inheriting it through, like you say, echoing down through each generation because of the traumatic event that might have happened 4 generations ago.
Right.
But because, let's say, we're born into this world, and I've had Bruce Lipton on the podcast multiple times talk about epigenetics and the environment and how the first, through even from the conception all the way to the first 7 years are crucial in our development. So if we're actually then growing up in an environment where the mum has got a belief as well that I can't express emotion, so not only are we getting it echoed through the DNA, but we're then getting it reinforced by the behaviors that we're actually living in.
Exactly. The language, the thoughts, the feelings, the actions. So it's coming through. But here's the kicker, and this is what most people miss. It's there for a reason. It's your
Mm.
clue to your destiny. You don't have a fate unless you choose that. Right there, when that no emotion has echoed all the way through to you, it's saying to you, I need to rest. You need to start another pattern. And that pattern's saying, I'm here, just look at me. Just look at me. So the one that's echoed through becomes the wisdom of the ancients. And the one that's trying to start becomes the legacy of the children.
Wow. So if we start becoming aware of this work, that even for somebody listening to this podcast today, and it's like, well, I've been feeling this my entire life and I just can't, then it's almost like we have the opportunity to break the cycle. And from that, there's a deeper meaning. Even I always look at it as soul's work as well, that there's something
Very
far
much.
greater
Yeah. Yeah.
that
You're
that's
breaking
allowing us
this.
to break in the cycle.
Yeah. You're breaking the cycle, but you're creating the change. You're the change agent. You're now writing the chapter that only you can write and that the system has been waiting for. It keeps offering that pattern over and over again, waiting for somebody to go, but it could be this. And that's the turn. That is the gem. It's waiting to become the gift that nobody is seeing.
And this being able to see that as the gift and go from there, then you must, I mean, you must see this all the time, but I get this question all the time. And I just think about me. I had to actually move and leave and go kind of wander the world like a lost soul for 10 years to find my way back to my heart and my soul and honor that moving forward. And at a very young age, at 18, 19, I just didn't have the guidance or the capability to understand what was happening. But looking back, I wanted to break that pattern in some
Right,
respects.
right.
So with when people come to work with you, surely there must be a concern or a question around, well, my family don't want to change. Nobody, my friends don't want me to change. Nobody wants to see me change. They all think I'm losing the plot because I'm now starting to talk about emotional inheritance, DNA, and what do
I
you say
hear
to
it
that?
all the time. And what they typically say is, okay, so I'm here and I'm going to do the work. But you have to know nobody else around me is going to do it because they're going to think I'm crazy. And I say to them, it's fine. A system works this way. One person changes and now everything else has to adjust. It cannot stay the same. To relate, everything has to adjust. It may not know it at the time, but it's busy adjusting. And they say, well, that's fine, but you will never see my family here. And then I see one, and then I see two, and then I see three. And before you know it, they've all come in. And I always say to them, so what made you come? Well, she changed, and we wanted to know what that was about. But it really is, it takes one. And of course, the other thing I will say when people come to a live event is I say to them, please, when you go home, do not go and verbally vomit all over everybody. Just, just be you and let it unfold, and they will see the difference. And then you'll get that whole when Harry met Sally thing where she's doing the sandwich thing and everybody's going, well, I want what she's eating. That's what happens.
Yeah, they see you starting to drink the Kool-Aid and want some, basically, isn't it?
Very much.
So when you work with people then, because you've mentioned you work with groups and individuals with this work, obviously the first thing person has to become aware that this work exists. And what's the next step for them then? Do you find this is a long process to interject, and like there's a consistency to it, or do you find once you get to the root, there's so many questions. I don't want to ask fire too many
Sure. No,
questions
you're
at once.
fine. So
Yeah.
so what happens is it's different for different people. For some people it can take 6 months to a year to fully unfold. For some people, I always say the people who come to me where they're at the point of I'm tired, I'm sick and tired, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I've run out of excuses. I'm I'm just here. Those are often the people who get this profound insight in the moment, and you can see it rewiring in the moment, and it happens often. And what they walk away with is a very big switch. And frequently they'll come and say, I've been working on that for 20 years. How is it possible that it's shifted in 1 hour? And it does, because it's that whole embodied experience. And it's because we also really create the container for that to be possible. So people feel safe. They can now
Mm.
complete conversations they couldn't before. They can look at something and not feel like they're crackers. They learn, and I teach it because of that. I teach it very, very logically. So I teach this in big companies, in Fortune 500 companies. So I teach it super logically so that people can understand it. Once they understand the logic, the rest comes in quite naturally.
Gotcha. How would you teach a big corporate company then? Because obviously, like you said, the logic is behind it. And how would that apply to a company? Are you still working with the individual, or are you working more with the company culture?
It depends, both, not either or. So what happens is I teach them the three basic tenets of systemic work. It doesn't matter what your issue is, it'll resolve into one of those three basic principles. Are we good? Yes. Okay. Now what we're going to do is have a look at the issue your company's got. And I had a CFO who said to me, and we're not doing that constellation stuff. And I said, no, we won't do constellations. So we sat down and I said to him, tell me the problem. Told me the problem. We identified all the components of the issue. And so I said to him, okay, I'm a really visual person. So we're going to write each component on a piece of paper and give it an arrow so I can see. And then we're going to put it on the floor so you can give me a spatial representation of what that is. So he puts it down on the floor. And I said to him, I started asking questions. Is that team always off to one side? Oh, yeah. Well, what about them? No, they're closer. So he brought the papers in. And about 2 hours in, he said, I've solved the problem. I know what it is. And then he turned around and he said to me, that was a constellation, wasn't it? And I said, yeah, it kind of was. So it's really respecting the corporate language, speaking it their way, getting to the logical piece, and then saying to him, how's it feel? Whoa. And I said to him, yeah, and that's what it does.
Amazing. What is the catalyst for the change? So when like there's that moment of when you say there's a realization if we're breaking an ancestral pattern that that could be gone for 4 or 5, who knows how many generations.
Absolutely.
When you think about the amount of years and the amount of lifetimes and things that have passed on, it's quite remarkable when you look back upon that. And there's that moment where we're actually the change maker for
Yep.
what's to come. What is the catalyst to then to creating that different direction in life? Is it simply bringing awareness to it, or is it how does it
So
from
there are
your
a couple of
experience
things.
work? Yeah.
What I look at is I ask the person, what is it that you're looking for? And sometimes they're not really sure, but they know the sort of
Mm.
general direction. They can usually tell me what they're not looking for. And we set that up, and I start to ask questions. And I'm very mindful of the language because we are tattling on ourselves all day long. Our language is very unique. It's specific to us as an individual and specific to our family systems. Highly unique. And so what I'll do is I listen to the language, and I'll give you an example. I had a lady come in who said, I want to belong to my family and I want to know I belong. And I don't feel like that. I'll do the piece of work, but I have to do it with my back to the group because I'm so ashamed. So I said to her, what's the shame? I can't belong. She says, growing up, my family only ever gave me just little drops of love, little drops of love. And she said, they're all very non-emotional. My mother, my father, my brother is the same, no emotion. I'm emotional. So I said to her, are you married? Yes. Do you have children? Yes. Do you give them lots of love? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So tell me about your mum and dad. And she said, well, they were survivors of the Holocaust. And I said to her, stop. Could they express emotion? Or was it too dangerous? And she said, "Oh, no, it was very dangerous. They would have been killed." So I said, "And yet they managed to give you just the little drops of love that they could, did they not?" And her whole body jolted. And that's what I look for, is that body jolt. And she said, "Yes." And I said to her, "What did you do with them?" And she said, "I guess I grew them." I said to her, "So how do you not belong? You've given them a legacy. You've grown what had stopped. You've started flowing it again. Can you see how you belong?" And she went, "Oh my God, I belong to this family. Look who I am for them, and look what they gave to me." So from being just a little drop of love, it was this whole legacy. And it was just using her language and flipping it around to show her what a little drop of love could become. So
Wow.
we've got the words in our mouths, we've got the feelings in our souls. It's literally making you aware of that and then activating your magicianship. Because what we don't realize is we are master magicians. I ask people all the time, "Do you watch horror movies regularly?" Most of them will say to me, "No." And I say, "Well, but you tell yourself horror stories about yourself all day long and believe them. Now, the opposite is possible. If you do what
Mm.
she did, which was tell herself a new truth and go, 'Oh, that's me.' That's her new truth. It's now become an internalized new version, and her life will never be the same because she now has new thoughts, new feelings, new actions. She's no longer living ancient history as though it were her own. She's now creating the present and a very new future with children who will have lots of love to pass on, not just little drops of love. So those little drops of love become really, really important.
Amazing, amazing. If only more people would understand what you just shared and how important it is. If we, because we look externally so much to fulfill an internal need, isn't it? And
Very much. And everything is literally within you
mm,
and
yeah,
around you and in your family system. By the way, whether you know it or not, because people will also say to me, "Yes, but I don't know my family." Yeah, you do. You know those idiosyncrasies that you have that you can't figure out? You know that funny language that you speak or that quirk that you have that nobody else has? Where do you think it came from? Didn't happen in a vacuum.
absolutely. You mentioned about body language and you look for the jolt. Do you find that we act out in behaviorally through our body language as well in in what we're inherited as a way
Yep.
of keeping ourselves safe?
Yep, very,
Yeah.
very much. Yep, very much. And in fact, I had somebody who came in, and the whole time that we were working, she kept standing on her left leg and lifting her right leg. And eventually I said to her, "What's that?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "When did it start?" "Well, when I was about 18. What happened to you when you were 18? I was raped." "Ah." And I went and told my father, and he said, "You stupid, stupid person. I taught you to be safer than that." And she said, "I haven't spoken to him since." And I said, "Yeah, now you raise your right leg so you don't have support from the father." And I said, "Who else didn't have support from the father?" And it went back generations. And then I said to her, "Let me ask you a question. You have a son. If he ran out into the middle of the road right now, what would you do?" And she said, "I would so smack him. I've taught him better than that." And she went, "That's what my father said." And I said, "Yeah, he wasn't telling you you were terrible. It was his jolt of fright, and that would be yours." And she was back talking to her dad within a week. Didn't stop standing on her legs, both her legs after that. So yeah, we watch for the body language.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Then, with all the people you've worked with over the years, and I'm certainly a believer of this, but how much do you feel then those unresolved emotions that we're living with is actually manifesting into a physical ailment or an issue or a problem?
100%.
100%.
100%. If it can't get your attention one way, it'll get your attention the other way. But there's another piece as well. Sometimes, if it's too much for you or too much for the brain to process, it'll sit in the body and then start to manifest because it's trying to get your attention. So, what you've then got to do is surface it, bring it to awareness, resolve it in the awareness, and then often the physical piece will go away.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
I've seen that with things even like tumors, by the way. Um, or we had a woman with a whole number of cysts in her body, and she had 7, and they couldn't work out why she kept producing them. And when we had a look, there had been 7 miscarriages, which we don't talk about. Well, systems don't like it when you exclude things. And so the system just very quietly had a way of showing her. When we put those in and she could acknowledge every one and take them into her heart, she didn't need them in her body anymore.
Wow. And were the 7 miscarriages from her or
Nope,
from
generations
past?
before, and that
Yeah.
was when we didn't speak about those things.
Wow. That's
So what you don't want
incredible.
to speak about, the
Mm,
system's going to go, well, pardon me, but here I am, and we're going to talk.
yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, I'm sure everyone listening to this will be racking their brain thinking back in previous generations and all the things that we were doing and doing it well.
And there's another
Unbelievable.
piece that's important, and that's that we don't just have our nervous system. You also have a family nervous system and a cultural nervous system. So it's not just about you.
Huh. Isn't that fascinating? At our last retreat, Judy, we actually measured the group nervous system.
There you
We
go.
Yeah, we used heart rate variability, and we created a link, and we got everyone sitting in a circle, and we were able to measure the actual frequency of that group nervous system
I am so
before and
not surprised
after.
by that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's certainly out there. Wow. Wow. Before I move on, because there's a question I want to ask you, is there any question I should have asked you in the topic that we've covered, or are you happy? Because I want to open up another dialogue.
No,
And
I think I'm good. If it is, I'm sure I'll find a way to circle round.
okay. But what are meta patterns?
Yeah. Do you
Because
want
I've
to
heard
know
you
what
speak
those
about
are?
that.
Sure.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Good. So meta patterns are things like wars, famine, diasporas. It's all the big ones because those have profound impacts on big demographics of people. And
Uh-huh.
so the Great Depression, big events. So these big events create meta patterns. So let's say, for example, the Great Depression. The Great Depression, you had a whole bunch of people who became hoarders, who were really, really risk averse. And that echoed down for a number of generations. The don't waste piece, the be careful you've got two. If you've finished one, make sure the other one's on your grocery list. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from you better make sure that you've got, because in this war, we have a scarcity. And you will have seen that with the pandemic as well. There are definite meta patterns out there too. And some of them are political meta patterns. If you're this, you wear a mask. If you're that, you don't wear a mask.
Mm, got you. And what are your thoughts on the last 2, 3 years from your experience, your perspective, the impact it will have on people? And yeah, I'd just be curious to know.
So I think again a couple of things. Number one, people may sort of shrink a little bit. A lot of people are saying this hit me and it affected me or it destroyed me. It's the reason that my event this year at Disney World is capability and resilience DNA. That is the topic, because what people don't realize, because we've not been raised that way, is that they developed a lot of capabilities, but they didn't internalize them. They didn't say, "Look what I can do now, 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 now." And so they
Yeah.
haven't made that part of their DNA, and it really needs to be wired in, or we will lose that again. And we don't need to lose that. We need to start recognizing we're a highly capable species with incredible evolutionary capabilities. And this is an important one. And the resilience. Look what we've been through. Nobody thought we were going to go through 2 or 3 years of lockdown. The other thing that it's opened up is people saying, well, I'm not really physical. They found out how darn physical they were when they couldn't hug anybody.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
it's changed
absolutely.
a lot of things.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember there was a moment here in Australia where I've never felt an intensity like this in my entire life before. This just pressure, it was so tangible
Oh,
in
yeah.
the air, and it just led to this point where you just think that mass hysteria is going to break out any moment. Like you could feel the fear. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm so grateful for that I've developed I guess an internal resilience of this work, because I'd been doing it for such a long time, and I had the tools to able to navigate myself, hold space for myself, and work through with me and my family what was happening. And then I would think about, wow, there are so many people out there that haven't learned these tools, that
Right.
do not know this exists, and they're just running, you know, and the default mode then becomes fear. So I just want to say that because it highlights how important this work is, and how important it is to understand ourselves and the way we work, and like you say, start to move those inherited systemic conditioning, if you
Right,
like.
right. I think the most important part of understanding ourselves is to understand that this is not difficult work. It's actually one of the biggest adventures you will ever go on. It's an
Mm,
absolute hoot. And once you start on it, you're going to go, how was I asleep for so long? This adventure was out here all the time. Yep, just waiting for you.
absolutely, absolutely. And I can say honestly, Judy, I've interviewed hundreds of people, and your sense of adventure oozes through the screen when I talk to you, and your enthusiasm. It's clear for everyone to see. So it's absolutely brilliant. And talking about a sense of adventure, why do you hold your group workshops in Disney World?
So I don't do all of them there, but once a year I do for a couple
Okay.
of reasons. Disney World is probably a little bit more expensive than many other places, so it makes you stretch. And I want people to stretch. Number
Hmm.
two, I put them in the heart of luxury so they can see what they're stretching to and see that they're becoming bigger. Because once you've had that experience, you want it again and again. Number three, you're in the heart of magic, and the person who really knew to keep going, even when the chips were down, even when people were saying you're crazy, give up, he didn't. And I want people to see what you're capable of creating when you don't give up. And then in the evening, of course, I take them into it and I say, now, we're doing capability and resilience this year. Go and have a look at what his capability and resilience created. And no, it wasn't just this way up, it had a lot of bumps and bruises. But if you keep going and you keep investing in the dream, you will get there. And not only will you change yourself in the process, you're going to change the world. There is no option. And people come in and they go, I'll never see the world the same. I can't, because you literally feel that very tangible magic and that
Mm.
absolute sense of possibility. You walk in and you say to them, oh, we have a problem. Oh, no, there's no problem. What can we do? Well, this has gone wrong. Well, let's see how we can make it right. They're always possibility oriented. And it's a remarkable feeling to sit in 4 days of that and to walk out going, wow, my whole frame of reference has completely changed.
Massive, yeah. And I just love the whole concept of what you're doing. And that word stretch really jumps out at me, because I think we get conditioned to retract, don't we? And but if we're willing
Right.
to lean in and stretch ourselves and sit in that discomfort, I guess it's finding the
Absolutely.
balance of how uncomfortable you want to make yourself feel, but
Yeah, it's the stretch without a snap.
stretch without a snap.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and I
Yeah.
always say to people, stretch that. I mean, when I did my first one at Disney, I was stretching because Disney doesn't play around. They tell you if you, and this is what I love, it's another aspect. If you want to invest in yourself, then do it. Don't sit in the fence, come do it. And so I wanted to do one there because I have a long story and history with Disney. And I had said when I was 9, when he died, if he's not there to make the magic, I will. And it traveled with me wherever I went. So
Wow.
I got to Disney the first time, and I think I cried for a week because all I could see were these huge possibilities, blew my mind. And I thought, what if I were to teach here? So I went to them and asked prices and went, huh. And my first one was a real stretch. It was, what if nobody shows up? What am I going to do? This is crazy.
Mm.
What are you doing? Are you? And I let those internal thoughts, which by the way, the little dissenters, those are usually your multi-generational ancestors having a word in there. And you've got to put that down and go, thank you very much, but moving on. So it was thank you very much and moving on. And I'm now into my 8th one and people
Wow.
love them.
Congratulations. It's amazing. I can so relate because obviously I run retreats here in Australia,
Exactly.
and I can relate 100% to what you share. And it's just fabulous what you're doing. And I applaud you for all of that and continuing to stretch and making space available for people to then stretch themselves and lean into this, which
Thank
is
you.
massive. Yeah. Just to look back and finish up the podcast regarding your book, what is your hope for your book, and what can people expect to find within the pages?
Okay, the hope for the book is millions of books out there because I really want humanity to understand it is not difficult to see that you are a remarkable life. You are a remarkable life. All you've got to do is know how to see it. I wrote it because people kept saying to me, I need to know how to do it. And even when I've been to a lot of this work, I don't understand it. So what I did was broke it out so that you can take that book, you can work through it. Not only will you understand your patterns and where they came from, how they're affecting you and what they're trying to tell you, but you will be able to set up a constellation for yourself and you'll be able to use it in your work. And that was the whole premise, was make it so understandable that anybody can pick it up and they're going to transform themselves.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I have one last question for you on the show, Judy, before we wrap the podcast up, and that is, with everything we've covered today, is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners to ponder on?
Yeah, who you are is the latest in a long line of love letters. For many of us, we've never opened those letters. All we've been taught is that we're small. You're not. You're not a train wreck. You never were. The things that happen to you happen for you. And if you learn to look at them that way, there is no way that you'll stumble into a junk pile. You'll find you're sitting in the middle of a gem pile, and it is waiting for you to pick them up, use them, and grow them one at a time. The universe is in service of you. It always was, and it always will be. And it is not difficult to do, but it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely beautiful, Judy. I will ensure all the show notes, the links to your website, to your book, will be below this podcast, whether people are listening on Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube. You just need to pause, drop down, and be able to find out more about your work and everything that you're doing, including Disney World as well. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Judy, and thank you for bringing your enthusiasm, your work, and I loved every minute of it, and it's greatly appreciated.
And thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you do over there.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.